I'm dishing with musicians. I'm dishing with musicians. A talk show about history. I'm dishing with musicians. I'm dishing with musicians. Let's take a stroll down music history. Oh man, what a theme song. Holy moly, good Lord. That was great. That was the first time I've heard it. Wonderful. This is the first time we've done any of this. This is great. I mean, I've done other streams before, as some of you might know, but this is the very first Dishin with musicians. Now, the point of this show, when I conceived it, is kind of just to talk music history with people who know it, people who have lived it, and people who are currently living it. So I am so excited, not only for you tuning into this, but for my guest today. I'm welcoming one of the Buckaroos. Now, if you don't know who the Buckaroos are, look up the Buckaroos. Some of you might know who Buck Owens is, but his band was called the Buckaroos. Now, Jim Shaw from Bakersfield, California, is going to join us here in a minute. I'm so excited, and I was kind of oddly guided to Jim in a very strange circumstances. I was on this spiritual hunt for a piece of music history, one of Buck Owens's guitars. And I was trying to find one of these great red, white, and blue Buck Owens guitars that back in the day were made by Gibson. And you know, it's incredible that I called the Crystal Palace, the only place I knew to call. And Jim was placed on the phone as the guy that might know a little information about it. And so from there, we had about a 2-hour conversation, it seemed like, about music history. And he's one of the kindest people in the world. And he was very kind to join me on today's show. And I'm going to welcome him on now and see if he's there in case he didn't go somewhere. But here he is. Jim Shaw. Hi, Jim. How you doing?
Doing well, thank you.
Oh, wonderful. Thanks for joining us. Fantastic. So you're in Bakersfield, California, correct?
Yes, I am.
You're in Bakersfield, California, the home of the
I'm in the Buck Owens building, it's called.
Is that right?
In my office, and right across the parking lot is the Buck Owens Crystal Palace.
My goodness, it's right. So it's two separate buildings?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So they had a complete different building for the admin. Is that right? Okay.
Well, it was here since the mid 80s.
Okay.
Buck owned a lot of radio stations. At one point, he had, I think, 8 radio stations and a TV station.
My goodness.
And several of them here in Bakersfield.
Well, this is fantastic. Now I finally got you into a place where we could document and record our conversation, because the first time we talked, I was just fascinated. I got off the phone and I was just glowing. And I ran to my wife and I ran to my father, who's a music historian. And I said, you'll never guess who I just talked to. So I'm so happy that you're here. First of all, thank you so much. And this is the first episode of Dishin with Musicians, to where it was my idea to kind of mix music history, just typical discussion. And if food comes up, awesome. I know that you help run the Crystal Palace, correct? Which is
I'm one of the team. Yes.
You're one of the team, and they serve food. So if it comes up, I do want to talk to you about some of Buck Owens' favorite food dishes later, but this isn't really a show about food. Dishin is in the name. If it comes up, cool. If not, whatever. I think Dishin is really just about talking. So I appreciate you being here once again. So where do we start? I think the people that are tuning in want to know the history of you and how you came into this incredibly fascinating time in music history. So give us a little background. And if I'm not mistaken, from the little reading I did on you, I believe you're from my part of the country. You're from Iowa, correct?
Born in Iowa, Esterville, Iowa. I'm sure nobody knows.
Yeah, it's a small town, I would imagine. Yeah, Esterville. Now, I'm in Lincoln, Nebraska, for those of you tuning in, and that's what this show is. It's part of the Nebraska Performing Arts Hall of Fame, which is Nebraska based, and we intertwine some Nebraska musicians. Buck Owens, however, is one of those people. He played in Nebraska numerous times, and Jim, you were with him on a couple of those occasions. So let's dig into your history and your life. Tell me about what's your earliest memory of music, and how did you get to California from Iowa? I just want to know that transition. How did that happen?
Well, I was born in 1946, and in the early 50s, there was a lot of people that left from that part of the country and moved to California. My mom and dad did when I was about 6 years old. And they started out up in on the coast near Monterey. And a year later moved to Fresno, California, where I grew up. Fresno is in the middle of the San Joaquin Valley.
Okay.
And about 100 miles north of Bakersfield.
Okay.
And so anyway, my music, I got, like many people in country music, I got all excited about rock and roll as a teenager.
Sure.
Had a little rock and roll band. And then
oh, you had a band, you had a rock band.
Well, I was in several little groups when I was 15, 16, 17
Oh my
years
God.
old.
What was the name of your first band? Can you remember it?
The Decades.
The Decades. Hey,
And then
that's a good.
Then later on we had the Paramounts, and
Oh, wow, those are good names. Those are good.
Oh
names.
yeah, they're perfect for that era. And we were doing a lot of
Absolutely.
instrumentals and surf music and
Oh, wow.
that kind of a thing. But as I got a little older and got out of high school, started to go to college, I wanted to figure out how I was going to make money to go to college. And someone said, if you really want to play music on a regular basis, you should think about country music, because there was 6, 7, 8 nightclubs in Fresno that had country music six nights a week.
Is that right? Wow.
And well, yeah, and even in Bakersfield at the time. At that time, before Mothers Against Drunk Driving, let's face it.
Yeah, sure.
In those days, people would go bar hopping, driving from bar to bar, and
oh yeah,
probably killing all sorts of people on the way. But
same around
a different era. And so musicians could actually make a living. You could work 6 nights a week, and to put it in perspective, a local musician might make 20 to 25 a night. So they're making $500 a month, but $6,000 a year was pretty close to what a school teacher would make.
Sure.
And so you could actually have a house and a family and be a working musician. There might have been 40, 50 people in Fresno at that time making a living playing music, and which doesn't exist anymore, really.
Wow, that's incredible.
But anyway, so I thought, country music, that's interesting. I have no opinions. I didn't know much about it. Dug into it a little bit and thought, hey, I like this, and got a job on a weekend country band, and then eventually learn country music during those 6 and later on 7 nights a week, 5 hours a night in the bars, learning all sorts of songs, how to play the keys, finding what it's all about. And that's kind of you're paying the dues part. You're in school there.
Yeah. So I read that you had an incredible ear early on, and you were able to. You didn't know how to read music. Am I right on that?
Oh no, like many people in country. No, I
many,
never learned
including myself. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, when I wanted to learn country music, there was a huge song at the time called "Last Date" by Floyd Kramer.
Okay.
And so I got a copy of it and pretty much wore it out. Ding, ding. What's he doing here? What's he doing here? And figured out what he was doing, and then took those licks and applied them to other songs, and just started adding to my toolbox, so to speak.
Sure. And so early on, you mentioned that you played bass, or was it guitar? Did you play
in rock and roll for a while? I was playing bass, yeah. But I moved to piano because I realized that in country music had tons of bass players, and they usually had to be good singers, and they were the front man.
Sure.
And I thought, well, that's not me. So I felt comfortable in playing piano, and there was very few piano players, so I did it that way.
There you go. So we went from rock and roll to country. Now, who were some of kind of the people that you were playing? Who were you covering at that time?
Oh, I mean, it was George Jones and Tammy Wynette, and in those days, country music was kind of all over the place, and a lot of I had heard country songs on the pop charts and didn't know they were even country. A lot of the stuff that crossed over. But I discovered Buck Owens and Merle Haggard early on. I loved them, and Ray Price and all sorts of music, and we had to cover all the hits in the clubs.
Sure.
And so that would have been in the 67, 68. Okay. And in a couple, 2.5 years or so, I got my own band started, and it was called the Country Revolution, and we played at a place in Fresno called Nashville West, and we were working every night, doing a television show on Saturdays, and after hours on the weekend till 5 in the morning.
Doing a television. Tell me about the
Yeah,
television
that
show.
was a local television show in Fresno.
Oh, is that right?
Where, yeah, Kansas City Stars.
Was it a morning show or was it an
No, it was
evening?
Saturday afternoon.
Saturday afternoon.
1 hour show.
Oh, wow. That's incredible.
Yeah, and didn't pay anything, but we're kind of promoting the club thing.
Sure.
And I was the band leader and doing very well for a guy that's 20. I was 22 years old, I think, by that time.
Wow.
And so I was happy. I was going to Fresno State College to be an industrial engineer, and I knew that I didn't want to be a flaky musician the rest of my life because I'd end up destitute by the time I was 35 and a has-been, and all the young guys that knew all the new licks would come in and boot me out. Sure. I mean, that was the opinion I had of trying to be a professional local musician.
Wow.
I had no aspirations to do anything.
So it wasn't in your mind at all to do it as a career. It just never.
Nope. I was going to be an engineer, and I don't know why I decided that, because it sounds miserable right now. I can't imagine if I had done it, but at the time it seems like the idea.
Oh, that's incredible. Well, you clearly made some right decisions. At 22, I think about myself at 22, and I go, "There's no way." I mean, I was playing in bands, but you did quite a bit at 22. It seems like that was you had your.
I was busy. I was going to taking 10 to 12 units and working all those hours and yeah, loving it though.
Wow, that's incredible. And like you mentioned, I mean, music was different where you could, and that's true with a lot of historians and people that I've talked to around here. The 60s into the 70s, even into the 80s, bands were playing, you could do a whole week at some place and it would that was normal. You didn't have to go anywhere. So did you travel outside?
No, that we were at one club, and I wouldn't have been able to travel and continue on. I turned down we had a guest artist, Dave Dudley. 6 Days on the Road was his hit.
Oh, sure.
Offered me a job, and I thought, I can't do that.
Oh, wow.
I gotta hang around here and go to Fresno State College.
So he wanted you to hit the road with him.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's incredible. So from that, we groove into a happenstance occurrence. Now, the way that I came to find out about it was, I believe were you sitting outside of a room ready to audition, or were you there to audition for Buck's band, or tell me this story? It's no,
I heard about Buck Owens' brand new state-of-the-art recording studio in Bakersfield.
Oh, I see.
100 miles south. And my friend Doyle Kurtzinger had just started with the Buckaroos about 5-6 months earlier.
Oh,
so even less than that. And he was a Buckaroo and telling me about how cool that was. And he was going to travel with Buck and move down to Bakersfield. And I contacted him and asked him about that recording studio, because I thought, I'll record an album of my band, and sell it off my TV show and make some extra money and publicity and all that. So he said, why don't you ride down with me? We've got a recording session first of the week, and ride down with me. He hadn't moved there yet. And you can get all the brochures and prices and everything out front. And when I'm done with the recording session, back in the back there in the studio, we'll head on home. So sounds like a plan.
That was great.
So there's a country singer named David Frizzell, who later on, many years later, had some hits and records on the Clint Eastwood movies about Any Which Way You Can, and all those different movies that Clint Eastwood did with the orangutans and stuff.
Any Which Way But Loose.
Anyway, during that era, David Frizzell and his duet partner Shelley West did a bunch of records. But at this time, he was only known as being Lefty Frizzell's brother, and knocking around different places playing, and played a little rhythm piano. And Buck had heard that he played a little rhythm piano and hired him to be the session piano player on that particular session that day.
Oh, wow.
And was doing a song. The first song they were doing was a tricky little song, and David couldn't play it.
Oh, wow.
It was a tricky song. Then it modulated to an ugly key. And I'm hearing about all this later. But he keeps fumbling it, and they're doing the song over and over, and Buck's getting frustrated, and it's getting uncomfortable in there. And so finally Doyle pipes up and says, hey, Chief, there's a guy out front who's a piano player from Fresno. Buck says, really? And goes out the doors, the double doors, goes out the other double doors, comes out to the front, opens up, and I'm sitting there, and here's Buck Owens. Like, oh, there's Buck Owens.
Yeah.
You're a piano player. And I said, yeah. And he said, can you play that song? And I didn't know what he was talking about, because I don't know what's going on in there. For some reason, he thought I'd know. I don't know why. But I just did like any bad B movie, right? I just said, sure.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
And
You always say yes when an opportunity.
Sure. So we go back there, and he says, you want to run it? Do you want to hear it and run it down once? And I said, I didn't know what the song is, right?
Yeah.
It's called New Orleans Cajun Queens, Mississippi River Boats. Little song.
Sounds jazzy.
Key of F, and then it modulates to G flat. And whoa. And so I'm making mental notes, what's going on there. He says, are you ready to record it? And I said, okay. And so I got through it. I have I don't think I could get through it today. But I did. And then he said, can you stay for the rest of the session? And well, I was there with Doyle. My ride was still there. Yeah. So I said, sure. And he says, sorry, it didn't work out, Dave. I'll pay you for the session. Dave, yeah, okay, great.
So was this guy in the room when all this happened?
He's standing there looking sheepish.
Oh my gosh.
And later on, years later, I ended up producing him. I was his producer. It's pretty fun.
So it's all under the water, under the bridge.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So anyway, I stayed for the rest of the session, and Buck said, can you do more sessions in the future? He says, and it was 2 or 3 a week. And I said, sure. I'm thinking, that's when I'd normally be sleeping, or whatever. But I thought, so I can make this work somehow. So I started doing a lot of recording sessions, and I was so busy. I remember I'd get paid whatever union scale was for a session, and maybe $82 or something. I don't remember what it was. And I'd get all these checks would come in, and I'd throw them in this drawer. And I remember I got a call from the bookkeeper saying, Jim, are you getting your checks? And I said, yeah. He says, would you mind putting them in the bank? And I said, oh, okay, sure. I'm sorry. So it's like,
you were just so enamored by having the paper, you didn't want to give it.
Well, no, like I say, I was making plenty of money. I had no life to live. I wasn't spending any.
Oh, sure.
No. So anyway,
you just kind of forgot to put it in the bank.
So that was March 8th of 70. And I was working with Don Rich, Doyle Holly, Doyle Kurtzinger, Jerry Wiggins was the drummer. And we're doing all these sessions, and he would bring in a steel player, generally I'm blanking on who it was. Buddy Emmons he was in Los Angeles at that time.
Wow.
But anyway,
one of the best.
So in late May, Buck called me one day. The secretary says, Buck Owens on the line for you. So that was unusual, because usually the secretary scheduled the session. So it was him. And he said, hey, Jim, can you come down and visit tomorrow maybe? And I thought, that's interesting. He didn't say anything about a session. He said, yeah. He says, we can chat. So I said, sure. So I met him down there, I think 10 or 11 in the morning, and go in there, and it's Buck Owens and Don Rich sitting in the console behind in the chairs behind the console, and said, pull up a chair. And so he described the Buckaroo job, what it envisioned, how much money I'd make, the benefits, the perks, the this and that, whatever, and wanted to know if I'd be interested.
Oh, wow. And
I remember I wore a suit and tie.
There you go.
And later on, I thought that was kind of dumb, but I didn't realize until later on that Buck was very impressed. And I always thought that was really neat when people.
Of your cleanliness and
you should look like money.
So he wanted you. Did he?
He wanted me just to be an official Buckaroo.
Yes, but does that mean that you would hit the road with him when he needed you to? Does that mean everything?
Pull the plug on Fresno.
Okay, so this is a complete life switch. Boom.
So I'm actually making more money in Fresno than I'm going to make, initially. Well, eventually, when you get into songwriting royalties and et cetera, it grows and you do better. But at that time, and I'm dropping out of college, and I'm thinking, wow. So I get the old legal pad out and draw the line down the middle. You know how that goes. And so you're writing down, yeah. And
pros and cons.
but I got to the part where it said, if I don't do this, I'll wonder my whole life
Oh, absolutely.
what would have happened, because he was big, he was Garth Brooks. He was big, and
Right.
it was going to be exciting. My first month I was on the Ed Sullivan Show. So it
Wow.
was. I thought, well, I have to do it.
Wow.
So I dropped out of school, and with 96 units.
Oh my goodness.
But anyway, later on, I come to know the Fresno State College president.
Oh,
And
okay.
she wanted me to go back and finish. She said, I want to make you my project. I said,
Oh,
no, I don't need to finish.
Oh, yeah, right. At that point, you completely change gears. The days of engineering were over. So do you remember your very first performance with the Buckaroos as an official Buckaroo?
It was somewhere I think it was in Minnesota. And it was, we flew commercial airlines, and we usually go out and do a Friday, Saturday, Sunday on the weekend.
Is that right? Oh, really?
And no bus. And we'd fly commercial. And I was used to having a really good monitor set up and everything. And we went and played this auditorium, big auditorium, 4,000 or 5,000 people, big stage, and all the speakers were up in the top cluster, no monitors.
Oh, wow.
And we get out there, and they introduce us this big echoey voice. I hear way off the distance saying, Buck Owens, the Buckaroos. Jerry kicks off 2, 3, 4. We start, and it sounded like being in a grocery store in an earthquake and cans falling off the shelves. I mean,
you just couldn't hear it.
I sat there paralyzed, like, I don't know what's going on here. Just a bunch of noise, and your ear has to get used to it. It was a whole new way of life for me.
Right. Sure.
Okay, here's where we are in the song. Later on, I met Ringo Starr, and he was talking about the days when they were playing with all the girls screaming and couldn't hear themselves. And he said they'd play Happy Birthday and stuff like that and just mess around. And he said, you didn't know what was going on.
Yeah, they didn't either. They didn't know what they were playing either. Wow, that's incredible. And almost the opposite when you go to a modern musician with in-ear monitors. Like transitioning to that is even weird for a lot.
Oh yeah. You've got you have two mixers in the band. One's going in the front of the house. Yeah. And very often the band has the best mixer doing their monitors. Which is pretty backwards as far as I'm concerned. It's not fair to the fans, but the musicians are spoiled today. But we eventually started getting like a side fill on either side where we could sort of tell what was going on.
Sure.
And Don Rich and I had a deal where we ran a long guitar cable from the one channel of his amp to one channel of mine, so I could hear what he was doing and he could hear what I was doing. Because
no kidding.
We just didn't just to hear what was going on up there. You're kind of doing it by memory.
Sure.
Wrote.
Yeah. Wow, not even to be able to hear yourself. That would be that I would panic as well. That's a tough one. So what did that lead to? So that led to how many shows on tour a year? I mean, or was there a set date?
By contract, he was allowed to use me on 150, but I don't think we ever did
per year.
150 days a year, but I think I probably did more like 125 or 30, and a lot of them were sit down in Vegas or Reno or Tahoe or wherever. So it wasn't really tough. Mm-hmm. I mean, the flying commercial in those days wasn't anything like today. The airplanes were half full, and you couldn't touch the seat in front of you and coach. I mean, it was pretty no security. Wow, it was a lot easier than it would be now.
So how did that work like a modern day show where you would show up and the gear would be there, or did you take your own gear?
It was called a fly date. Yes, they had to supply amplifiers and drums. I carried a portable keyboard. The guys had their amps. We would get into town and rent a couple station wagons, and at the airport, drive to the hotel, and head out to the venue. And same
goes for Buck and Don with their guitars and everything. Like they didn't bring.
We carried Buck's guitar with us. Yeah, Don rode with us, and he is in charge of Buck's guitar as well. And
but Don had his own guitar, like he would tour.
Oh yeah.
Okay, I see.
He carried 2 tellies and the bass and a keyboard and the drummer's drumsticks, and that was about it. They provide all the actual hardware. Sometimes it was horrible, the equipment.
Oh, I bet so. It still is. I mean, I've done those too, where you show up and you're like, I can't play this. This is crazy.
But you have to.
It's the same thing. Yeah. Wow, that's incredible. So that led to 125 shows. Now this is through the 70s where, Buck was enormous. I mean, like you mentioned, I mean, you were playing, So the venues were 4,000 or 5,000 seat. Is
Well,
that
they varied.
okay?
They varied. We did smaller ones and bigger ones.
Oh, okay.
And then, festivals were monstrous.
Sure.
And Buck really, like many artists still do, love playing the intimate rooms.
Yeah.
Great, that had a reputation.
Oh, sure.
Love doing those things.
Okay.
It's a lot more fun than rows of people way out there.
Sure. Now, I don't want to skip over what we country music lovers know as the Bakersfield sound and how that came to be. So can we kind of jump back in time a little bit?
Sure.
And talk about what you know of, because traveling with these guys, I mean, they had to know that Buck Owens was on. I mean, he was influenced by people that were in Bakersfield from what I've read, but he was kind of at the cusp of something enormous that later became known as the Bakersfield sound. And we've had a lot of questions come in to ask this as well. Why is it called the Bakersfield sound, and how did the Bakersfield sound come to be? Like, what is it?
Well, I did another interview where I kind of came up with this thought, which is my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always felt that there's a lot of talk about it and who is responsible and who gets the credit, etc.
Right.
But everybody talks about the fact that the Okies and Arkies and Texans settled in the 40s and 50s in the valley here.
Mm-hmm.
And they were in Bakersfield, but they were also up in Fresno and Madera, Merced, Stockton, Sacramento area, Visalia. They are Tulare, more likely. And every town had a strong music scene with the nightclubs, just like they did in Bakersfield and Fresno.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of country band music and dance music for hard-working, hard-drinking people. And any one of those places, it could have popped out. But Buck was a great businessman and a very smart guy. I always said that you could take everything away from him and start him over again. He would have done it again.
Wow.
It wasn't about luck for him. And he made a connection with Ken Nelson down at Capitol Records. He had been doing recording sessions there for other country acts, and nothing much huge was happening. But there's a lot of country music, but it hadn't exploded yet on the national scene. The country wasn't as big on the national scene as anyway. He all of a sudden got a record deal, and after some false starts, had a huge success using his own band, his own songs, and Ken Nelson turning him loose to do his own thing. And he opened the door for Merle Haggard several years later when Merle Haggard comes along with his own band, The Strangers, and his own songs. And Ken says, hey, I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm not going to send him to Nashville. I'm going to let him do that thing with his band. Ironically, it's being recorded in Los Angeles at Capitol Recording Studios, so it's not Bakersfield, but it's the Bakersfield sound. So anyway, those two guys, Buck and Merle, are the ones that took it to the national stage, and they're the ones that made it happen. And if somebody like that, or they had been in Fresno or where else, it would have been called the Fresno sound, I think.
Oh, wow.
And so anyway, they basically lit it off.
Right. And it took their, I guess you could say, their celebrity that kind of pushed it, even though they were influenced by
their success on the charts and the radio. Yeah.
Right.
We had a publishing company called Blue Book Music that we published all of Buck's and Merle's songs in the early 70s. And in 73, I started, I was the manager of that. And I was aware that in late 73, at one time, we Blue Book Music published 13 songs out of the top 100 country songs on the charts.
Oh my
13 out of 100.
Wow.
One publishing company. Nashville had 200 publishing companies and all those other acts, but we were hot. And it was all Buck and Merle and people that, like Buck he brought on Susan Ray and his son Buddy Owens and we had other acts that in part of our stable that in fact traveled with us. We were a package show, and also doing their records. We were recording like crazy because Buck had to put out 2 albums a year, sometimes 3, a Christmas album,
And this was all under his contract with the label.
All under his contract with Capitol. He had full say over what he was going to do.
Wow.
And then Buddy would put out an album. Then Don Rich and the Buckaroos, we'd put out an album every year. And then Don and Buddy would do a duet, and Buck and Susan Ray would do a duet, and she'd do 2 albums. They do a Christmas album. We do a hee-haw album. So we were in the recording studio constantly.
Wow. And were you a part of these, not only a part of the sessions, but were you a part of the business transaction part of it too? Or did that cut? Because I seem to remember you had a hand in some of the business.
Well, yeah, he gave me other hats to wear eventually.
Oh, I see. But eventually.
Well, yeah, like I said, 73 was the publishing, but the thing that was more exciting to me was the opportunity to get into recording, production, and producing. And
I see.
Interestingly enough, that was only because I was excited about it, single. I didn't have a wife and kids at home. And at the end of the session, when everybody else, hey, are we done? Are we done? Can we go now?
Mm-hmm.
I remember the very first time I said to Buck, hey, Chief, would you mind if I hung around? And I just kind of like to see what you do next, how you how does this work? I'm excited to learn. And he got excited. He jumped up and he said, hey, sit over here. And he pulled his big captain's chair out for me and grabbed a folding chair for him to sit on. And I realized, wow, he's wanting to share this.
Wow.
And so he started teaching me, and I started staying. And pretty soon, after several weeks of this, he'd say, okay, let's put some high third guitar and some acoustics on here. Jim, you know what I want. And he'd get up and walk into his office. And so I would do it. So all of a sudden I got this gentle handoff.
Right.
And 6-8 months later, I was doing a lot of it, and he put my name on as co-producer, and it was just a neat opportunity for me.
Wow, that's incredible. Right place, right time kind of deal. Yeah.
That's
incredible. My father shared a lot of stories with some of the early sessions that they experienced too. Guys named, I don't know. Do you know Garth Fundis? Have you ever met him?
I know exactly who he is. Yes.
So Garth played with my father, and he kind of had the same scenario. If I had my dad on here, he'd be able to tell you the real story. But he would hang around the studio with Cowboy Jack and all these folks, and he was actually given the helm, and then later became a producer with Trisha Yearwood and Garth Brooks and some of these people. So, and a rock and roll band named Garbage, and so he became. But he was like you. He stayed because he was interested, and he would sweep the floors, and he would do little tasks here and there. And then they eventually said, well, why don't we just give him the job, and he kind of moved his way up. That's a fascinating tale. I mean, it sounds like that was
people talk about, it's politics, it's who you know,
right?
But I mean, that's not such an insidious evil thing if you think about it. When you need to move somebody into a position, you look around and you see, who do you know?
Right.
Who do we know? I mean, as opposed to bringing in some from the outside who's going to be a big mystery. Are we going to click? Are we going to get along?
Right.
Buck was all about promoting within. He'd always rather do that than bring in the outside expert.
That's and using his family, right? This would be a great transition to ask you about Dorothy Owens, his sister.
Yes.
Now, explain to me Dorothy's role, because when you sent me a piece of music history, the box that it came in it said, "Attention, Dorothy Owens."
She was the office manager.
Incredible.
Yeah. She wasn't making major decisions.
Okay.
She was running the office. She was taking that off of his hands.
So
and he also had his booking agency was OMAC Artists, which was Owens McFadden, his manager Jack McFadden, and that there was a whole staff. Both these entities had lots of secretaries and assistants, and we were taking care of everything in the office to make sure that we could go out and do these bookings and or the publishing or the production. They were handling all the grunt work.
I see.
And Dorothy headed up the office.
That's incredible. So these guitars were before your time. They were like 64, I think.
No, in that late 60s.
Oh, late 60s was
late 60s, yeah.
Okay.
69.
Okay, 69. All right. So he was commissioned to make those guitars through. They were made by Gibson, but put out, I think, the name on it.
Gibson had a Harmony factory.
Harmony business trip.
And then and they were sold through Sears, so he had on the
Right.
Silvertone moniker.
Silvertone was the moniker there.
So it's Gibson, Harmony, Silvertone.
Yeah.
And interesting enough, if you go to the Crystal Palace when we get open someday, you'll see multiple other prototypes. When Buck was a big star, said, "I want to issue a red, white, and blue guitar." He sent the word out. Fender, Ovation, etc. They sent up their versions of guitars. Okay, the one in that picture that you're working on right now.
That doesn't have his name on the top, so this is pre.
That's let me put my glasses on and look at that. That's interesting.
Looks like the same body, but not.
It doesn't say American on that. Could be a prototype. By the way, do you see the bearded guy at his elbow? That's me.
I know. I knew that. That's incredible. That's Jim Shaw right there. Can you see my mouse, everybody? And
I don't know why that doesn't say.
I believe this
American
was
on the top. And then if is that one of the prototypes? I don't know. I have to dig into that.
Fascinating. Well, it's fascinating that there's so many different types that came out, and I heard that he actually recorded with them. Is that correct?
Oh, every Buck Owens record usually had one of those acoustics on it because it was a really bright sound. Didn't need any EQ. We just liked the sound of it for a Buck record.
Right. It's got a real boxy sound, and even artists, as many of you listening out there might know, I'll go from recent to back, but a guy named Ryan Adams, who is very popular, he plays and owns one, plays it all the time. It's got a very boxy, tinny sound, and it's a very distinct sound for a triple O body and a double O body like that. So it's not
Nirvana and their unplugged video.
Sure. Oh, Nirvana. I forget that fella's name. Somebody will have to remind me. But he played one on the Nirvana Unplugged. You're right. But yeah, so a lot of folks now have kind of found them and made them their own. So it's a fascinating history into, especially him marketing those to Sears. And I think you could probably buy them out of the Sears catalog, correct?
For less than $100.
Less than $100. And wow. And
so there's thousands of them out there.
Is that right? Yeah.
A lot of them are pretty miserable. The headstock falls apart.
The headstocks broke on all of the ones I see. The headstock.
Yeah, it got very brittle, just fell apart.
Yeah.
But we're talking about 50 some years ago.
Sure. Wow, that's incredible that he actually used them. And he actually gave them to his friends. I mean, he would give them as gifts to musicians and and so on and so forth. Mine has an interesting story, but I won't go into it. It's you tell me if you want to go into it, but I won't go into it. But we can talk about also, I'd love to bring up the fact that some of these uniforms, and I don't know if you wore these. I believe you did.
I was not. No, I came in after the fact.
You kind of came in after the fact, so this is kind of
there's the Doyle Kurtzinger, our bass player, was the guy in charge of buying our clothes. That would be him on the upper right next to me.
Okay.
It's Doyle, myself, Jerry Wiggins, and then Jerry Brightman, steel player on the. What are we wearing there? I don't know.
It looks like
we've got some really weird clothes.
Some polyester. Goodness. So if we go back even further, Carnegie Hall, of course, Buck played at Carnegie Hall, released a record there, a live record, and it's fascinating. This is a really great picture that I found where he autographed it to me, which is fantastic.
Wow.
No, I'm just kidding. This is, I always imagine that he did, but this says to Michael, which is fascinating.
Okay. You had to go in there for a second.
No, this is not, folks, I was pulling your chain. This is not mine, but I actually love this picture because it does say to Michael. But these outfits, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he had suits made by Nudie Cohen. Is that correct?
Yes.
So some of these.
Turk first and then Nudie.
Right. Oh, okay.
Then Nudie's guy who went out on his own was Manuel. Later on, somebody.
Yeah, Manuel. Yeah, which
moved to Nashville eventually.
Which he's still making suits, I believe, in Nashville.
I think so.
Yeah. So what history do you know about that? Because I mean, that's a big piece of music history. The Nudie suit.
Well, I just know Buck made a lot of regular trips down there for suits and fittings at Nudie's place in Hollywood.
Oh, okay. So he was in Hollywood at the time. Okay,
Yes.
gotcha. Okay, fantastic. And Nudie was quite the guy. I mean, he would rub elbows with a lot of,
Oh yeah.
I
And
mean,
all the Western stars too.
sure. One of his very first outfits was the famed Elvis Presley gold outfit. I think that was the
Mhm.
very first Nudie suit, if I'm not mistaken. But you know, as many of us know, they're kind of gaudy looking. They're very loud and rhinestoney and beautiful, and people still buy them. I mean,
And Bucks were a little different in that he went for that short, I think they call it an Eisenhower jacket sometimes, but that short cut was the one he kind of popularized
I see. Okay.
instead of the long traditional sport coat
It
size.
kind of reminds me of kind of like a bullfighter or something.
Yeah, you're right.
These beautiful, yeah, just Mexican bullfighters. They're really fantastic. Well, I wanted to bring that up because it's a fascinating piece of history that he kind of popularized.
We have a lot of those, quite a few of those suits at the Palace on
Yeah.
display, but a lot of them disappeared.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, we don't know where they went.
Oh, just in general, or
They're gone. I know what we have stored in all of our various places and buildings, and Buck and I were aware of 20 years ago, or that those suits are gone. We don't know what happened to them.
is that
He's
right?
thinking that maybe they were given Dorothy giving away to charity or whatever back in the 80s or something. We don't know.
Wow.
You'd
Wouldn't
think
that
they'd
be?
resurface. When we
Yeah.
opened the Palace, I was hoping a bunch of people would come back and offer to sell them back to us or whatever. But
Yeah.
just one or two suits showed up like that, and I'm thinking, come on, there was five of each suit.
Yeah.
Made,
Right.
where are they?
Well, sure. Wow. So they're out there somewhere, just people
Mhm.
probably hanging in somebody's, grandpa, grandma's collection. That's fascinating to think about that. Wow. Well, this is one that I found. I'm assuming this is from the museum. This is one I
Yeah.
found behind glass here. But just to take a peek, this was from an album.
Mhm.
Shoot. Yeah.
We don't have not a single one of those suits.
That's fascinating.
See,
Wow.
you see the difference in the color between Buck and the band, how they reverse.
Right.
What he would do is he'd buy two sets of suits. He bought the whatever those colors are. I'm not good at seeing that, but
Sure.
he'd buy 5 like the one he's wearing and 5 like the one the band's wearing. And then
Okay.
they bought it, and then they just alternate. The night the band wore that color, he would do the one that set himself off.
Wow. Okay.
That's how they
I
used to
see.
do that. That's why there's usually, like in the Carnegie Hall one back there's blue and yellow. Sometimes he'd wear the blue one and the band would wear the yellow.
I see. So he would just wear the opposite
Mhm.
colors just to stand him out a little bit.
Yeah.
Wow. It's incredible. So there's quite a few suits out there then. That's great.
Mhm.
Here's another shot of them standing in
Mhm.
front of Carnegie Hall.
Yeah.
And and it kind of went into popular culture, Robert Redford wearing one here.
Yeah.
And it's like, it kind of became a thing, and Nudie his name is kind of stretched in numerous directions. But here's a picture of the Crystal Palace. This is the front of the Crystal Palace, and this is what it looks like today, correct?
Absolutely. Very empty.
Yeah, very empty.
You can go to buckowens.com and take the virtual tour of the Palace if you want.
Oh, is that right? Okay,
Yeah,
perfect.
you can go all the way through it. It's really neat.
It's a beautiful place. I've seen it on numerous videos, and I can't wait to experience it live for myself. So obviously the shows have shut down during the pandemic, like every place has.
Yeah.
I own a booking agency and a record label myself, so I've felt the reverberation of that.
Yeah.
But hopefully we can get some more shows happening soon. Have you guys delved into the virtual thing at all?
We're doing a Thursday evening Facebook thing.
Are you really? Oh, great. Oh, I'm looking forward to that. Fantastic. And I assume people can find out more information about that on your Facebook page or website. Perfect.
In fact, that's today. Yeah.
Fantastic. And this is what the inside of the Crystal Palace looks like. And all around this side wing and even upstairs, I believe there's these little offshoots and all these windows are filled with memorabilia.
Yeah, that's our displays.
Right.
Those windows.
And one of the fascinating pieces of the whole museum itself is behind the bar. Now, let's chat about that for a second.
We're back to Nudie.
We're back to Nudie, and this is Nudie's car. And
he built 3 of that 72 Grand Am version.
Okay.
He built
72.
others, Cadillacs and stuff. I don't know how many he built, maybe 8 or 10 or 12. I have no idea. But
Okay.
for a while, he was on Grand Ams and did 3. And at one time, we owned 2 of them.
Wow. And I take it, did he work on the upholstery and everything on the inside?
That was their thing. He put
Okay.
his tailors would do all the embroidery and leather work and retooling and everything. And then
I see.
then they'd slap on guns and cow horns and rifles and
Just deck it out. Just deck it out. And this is actually the real bar. This is the bar area where you sit. And this is the bar where you now. What does the back tire say? Does it say?
I think that one says Elvis.
Okay, so that's an interesting story. Is that the real Elvis Presley have anything to do with that?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
He didn't know it, but
he didn't know it.
You mentioned that Nudie did suits for Elvis early on.
Sure,
well, Elvis had handlers, these gentlemen that watched over his money and made sure Elvis spent and gave away more money than he should have.
Oh, sure.
So these handlers tried to take care of that, protect his money. And after Nudie got with him and sold him $100,000 worth of suits and stuff like that, they said, let's make sure that guy doesn't get next to Elvis anymore. So Nudie would call and his phone would never go through and his messages would not be returned.
Oh,
so
my
he said,
God.
I have a plan. And he said, so he built that car and to give to Elvis as a present.
Wow.
Thinking that is get him back in the door. Then how could Elvis refuse to buy some suits for him? And he thought he'd come out ahead on that deal.
Wow.
Well, guess what? The handlers wouldn't let him even give it to him. They wouldn't let him get to him in any manner. Month after month goes by, and he's getting more and more frustrated, during which time Buck would go down for a fitting. And as he pulled into the parking lot, he'd see the thing in the back of the shop back there. And so finally, one day after a couple of months, Buck says, what's the deal on that car back there? And Nudie says, oh, I'm sick of it. He says, told him the story. He says, I'm not getting anywhere. He says, I'm so frustrated. I'd sell it right now for what I have in it. The first person that asks.
Wow.
How much? And Nudie said, $11,000.
Oh my God.
So, well, the new car at that time was probably $4,000, $4,500 maybe. I don't know. And that was probably his cost. And so anyway, Buck said, it's a deal. So that we got that one and drove it in parades. Annette Funicello of the Musketeers lived in this area, and she sat on that little parade seat in a parade once. I remember that was pretty cool.
Oh wow!
And so anyway, we used to call it the Buckmobile, but yeah, it was made for Elvis. And later on, when we decided to put it up on the wall, so to speak, just for the fun of it, we put the Elvis letters back on, just to kind of perk people's interest and tell the story.
Did it ever say Buck on it? Did he ever have his own name?
Yeah, I went to Buck and then went back to Elvis. To tell you the truth, I'd have to walk over there and see what it says now. I think it says Elvis now.
Oh, I see. So it's interchangeable is what you're saying.
Well, it wasn't. It's only been done once, but I've slept since then and I don't remember.
Wow, that's a fascinating story. It kind of is neat that it says Elvis. You kind of get the history.
It's a big job getting it up there.
Oh, I was going to say that doesn't look like an easy task. Yeah. That is a real car, ladies and gentlemen.
We took out the engine and transmission and the battery and
stuff
like that.
Dangling behind a bar. That's incredible. I love it. I love it. That's really beautiful. So this is another shot that's a little bigger, but you can kind of see the interior and the intricate leather work that he did.
Take the virtual tour on buckowens.com and you'll see.
Oh, there you go.
Of it, yeah.
Yeah, probably higher res than this, but you can get the idea here. Well, that's fantastic. And here's another shot from the inside, and this is some really cool
10 statues.
Yeah, 10 statues that were made. That looks like Hank Williams, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's Hank Williams Sr. And Hank Williams. In the back is Garth Brooks.
Yep, Garth Brooks
right there. For that picture. And then that would be George Strait.
George Strait. Okay. How many of those do you have inside the museum?
10.
10 of those. Wow.
We have Elvis. Incredible. We have Johnny Cash.
Sure.
George Jones, Merle Haggard.
Wow. That's incredible.
And whoever those people were that were alive came to the dedication. And we dedicate those in the Crystal Palace parking lot. We had 7,000 people in a big stage.
Wow.
And on that stage, the night of the dedication, Garth dropped to his knees and proposed to Trisha.
Oh, is that right? Right outside of Crystal Palace?
Right at the Crystal Palace.
Is that right?
Mhm.
Wow. Fascinating history. That's great.
Probably why he came back a couple months before COVID closed us down. He came back and did a concert, a dive bar concert with us. That place was absolutely a crazy place that night.
Oh, inside the Crystal Palace, he did it. Did he really?
Yeah.
I wouldn't consider that a dive bar, but that's pretty cool.
We'll take what we can get.
Yeah, you'll take what you can get. That's fascinating. Wow, that's great. Fascinating story. Wow, very cool stuff. And I thought I had one more. This is a different angle from the other side. You can kind of see, and it kind of has an old timey look to it. An old kind of Dust Bowl looking era, kind of mansion. That's very cool. Fascinating. Yeah, very cool. Well, this is great. Now we had some photos there, but I wanted to ask you, this is kind of an interesting question just from the business, because I'm a musician and a songwriter. Now, as many people know, record labels were all about publishing, and they were all about making sure that they kind of had control of the artist. And as we know, this is kind of a multi-tiered question. Nashville's kind of a machine, as we know, and a lot of people go out there to kind of outlet, they want to live their dream as a songwriter and kind of make it big. Buck didn't seem like he was much like that. There was kind of a push and pull against the Bakersfield thing and the Nashville thing. I guess my question to you is, he kind of rebelled against that machine. And my second question, part of that is, did he kind of maintain control of his publishing?
Absolutely.
Okay. And were you a part of that?
Yes. That publishing company I started managing in '73, Blue Book Music, was his company.
So he
actually owned the publishing to Act Naturally, Tiger by the Tail, Together Again.
Sure.
And Merle Haggard songs too.
That's incredible. Wow.
Until we sold them in '86.
Okay. To
Tree Music, who sold to Sony.
Okay.
So but Buck also did something just as brilliant as everybody knows about keeping your own publishing, but he also was one of the first to negotiate owning his own record masters.
Okay.
The publishing is the song, but the production, that particular cut of Act Naturally, for example, or Tiger by the Tail, or Together Again,
right?
That session is usually owned by the record label, and Buck owns it himself. So if somebody wants to put one in a movie or whatever, they have to come to us, and that's one of my jobs, is to negotiate the synchronization license to the music.
Oh, I see. So that would mean that if they want to use it for a movie and they want to manipulate it in any way, or cut out lyrics, or
if they just want to use it, in any manner.
In any manner.
It doesn't matter how it's manipulated. Generally, we know it's cut down, but no, that part doesn't matter. If they want to use any piece of that at all,
I see.
We control the master.
Okay, so they
even though we sold the publishing.
Right. I see. That's great. So you kind of have a commerce avenue there for them to use your, studio time, I guess, or your ability to access that. Wow. That's fantastic. Well, that's kind of a smart move. I mean, I don't think a lot, I would hope a lot this day and age that people know about that. But
Buck's, one of Buck's missions was in his later years is, for instance, he told Garth how to do it and twisted Garth's arm until he did it. Garth said, I don't know. I've already signed a contract. I don't think I can do that. And Buck said, sure you can. Just tell him you're not happy. And got a call a while later, and Garth said, guess what, Buck? I got my masters back.
Oh my God.
And that's tens of millions of dollars to Garth.
Wow. That's huge.
Yeah. Buck spread that gospel. I know the record labels probably hated him.
Wow.
For, stirring things up.
Well, my father's educated me quite a bit on how that works, because
think about it. When you sign up as an artist, the record label gives you, they say, all right, here's $100,000 to do an album.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guess what? The first, all the royalties that you make, if you have a hit and are successful, go to the record label till it's all recouped. They get it all back before you get your first nickel of royalties. So you paid for the session.
Right.
You paid for it. Why shouldn't it be yours? And that was Buck's argument.
Wow. That's a valid argument. That's pretty good.
Now, if you were unsuccessful and they rolled the dice and the record flopped, well, they're out the money. They're saying, well, we took the risk. And so we want to average it out. Kind of like the drug people saying, the pharmacy people saying, you know, oh, we spent so much researching and we have this investment, so we should be entitled to make all this money here on a winner.
Right.
So, you know.
Sure. Wow.
You're talking to.
You know, the business side, I've always thought of myself as a businessman. I own my own business in Nebraska, and I'm also a musician. So I want to say I hope a lot of musicians know that side of it. But to be a musician and a businessman, there's something to be said about that. That's a big deal.
Today, I think you need to know all about streaming and how you can collect some money, and because all the old models are gone. You know, you're not selling DVDs and CDs, and you know, people are starting to put some vinyl out. But I mean, the old business model's gone. Right. And pretty soon, it'll all be about streaming. And now I'm seeing what the iTunes and these people want to do, and Amazon, is they just want to make a blanket deal with you where you pay a monthly or yearly fee and just can listen to all the music out there. Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, how in the world is a songwriter going to get paid, and how's it going to be allocated properly? How does the guy that's got a really good song that's getting some, you know, so this is difficult. In the old days, the performance royalty, like ASCAP and BMI, they did it. They monitored through the radio stations and used that to correspond to jukeboxes and live performance and stuff like that. Right. But they transpose those figures over. But it's all brand new and moving, and it's hard to keep up with. Well, I hope that something happens on the government level. I mean, you know, it goes higher, because as an artist, I can tell you, I think it's like 0.002 cents per spin, and it's not. It's, our royalty statements for a while came in a box. There was 2 reams of paper, and then of course they stopped doing that, and now the thousands of pages of teeny fractions of pennies in each row. Right. It's just crazy. It is, yeah. I don't think it's a fair shake for artists these days. Well, and how are you going to audit that? You know, they're going to say, here's how much you made. How are you going to audit that? Right. It has to be reformed. I think that's a valid conversation, and we could probably talk about that for days. I know I could, because I fight it on the local level, the state level, and I'm, you know, and even ASCAP BMI writes as far as playing your songs in a bar. You know, a lot of bars around Nebraska are shutting down because they're getting threatened by these companies, you know. So, and again, live music getting swept away by the wayside because of it. So it's a sad thing, you know. But I think it moved too fast. The digital era came in too quick for that to even take heed, and they haven't reformed it for a fair shake. So I really hope that happens. But well, you know, this has been awesome. Thank you so much. And is there, you know, I guess I would like to close with, I mean, you shared some incredible things about Buck, just kind of being a teacher and a guide for you for the rest of your career. What was one of your cherished memories of Buck towards the end of his life? I know that you were probably there with him, I would imagine, when he took sick. I did hear that shortly before he died, he was kind of feeling tired, and he left early that night. And the story I heard was that he was walking out to his car, and a car full of people pulled up from out of town, and they were so excited. Portland, Oregon, I believe. And so you know the story. Well, he generally, before he go on stage, you know, I'd go into the little office area down there right by the stage, and he came downstairs and he didn't have his guitar, and I could kind of tell he was on his way out. And he said, "Hey Jim, I'm really not up to it tonight. You guys are going to have to do it without me." And it happened occasionally, and we were always sad to have to announce Buck isn't going to be here tonight. It's just us. Right. And they throw stuff at us. Oh, sure. Yeah. No, but anyway, he walked out the door, and the reason I know this is true because later on he told it on stage that night. But yeah, these people pulled up and they got out and they're on the boardwalk out there, and oh, Buck, we're so happy to be here because you're here because the last time we were here, you were sick and we missed you, so we took another chance and we came back again from Oregon. And,
wow.
And he said, oh man. So he turned around, walked back upstairs, changed his clothes and everything. And so,
wow.
I didn't think he was there. So we kicked off Buckaroo, and my stage manager kind of got my attention, and I turned around, looked, and there's Buck at the door waving at me and I said, oh, and I told Kim, I said, Buck's here, because I was told her to make the announcement.
Sure.
So we introduced Buck. Buck comes up, and Buck told the story.
Wow.
He said, we got some people here from Oregon, and they're the reason I'm here. I was going home. I didn't feel good. So he told the story. So that's why I know it happened.
So you know it, yeah.
And but that was the night. Yeah, he didn't play really long, and I just remember this so much. It was Friday night, and came over and put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Well, good night, Jim. I'll see you tomorrow night."
Wow.
And walked off the stage, and got the call at about 5:30 and then Saturday morning that he passed away that night.
Is that right? Morning. Wow.
And so we always say, though, he had his chicken fried steak, got to play a show, and at the Crystal Palace, and died in his sleep.
That's the way he wanted to go.
Yeah,
that's incredible. And his favorite dish,
chicken fried steak.
You mentioned food. And that's I'll take it. You mentioned that was his favorite dish, chicken fried steak. And I assume you still serve that at the Palace. Yeah. That's incredible.
Yeah, it's our most popular item.
Yeah. Wow. So this is just it. I play music for the same reason, and I'll play sometimes even if I know I'm not getting paid. And a lot of times I've been actually during COVID, I've manufactured or engineered, I guess you could say, a pedicab with a little PA system on it. So a bicyclist has been pulling me through the streets in Nebraska here, playing music for old folks' homes and even people in the street, and they come out and dance on their porch. But this is just it, right? I mean, we do this because we love it, and it's you see people coming from out of town like that and say, they drove all this way and I wasn't here last time. The guy's on the verge of passing away and he plays a show for these people. That's an incredible gift, and what a heart. That's a fascinating story. Wow.
That's why he built the Palace. So to go back to his roots.
Yeah.
He felt necessary to do his hits each night, generally, sometimes in a medley, but he really wanted to play his favorite old Hank Williams songs, George Jones songs.
Wow.
Bob Wills. We played thousands of songs that he played when he was young in the bars in front of a live audience with grandpa and the grandkids dancing on the dance floor.
Yeah.
To him, that was what he wanted to do. Didn't have to travel, let the people come to him.
Right.
That was what he wanted to do, to play music.
Well, what a great, as you're getting older, you get kind of tired of the road and to have his own place like that where he can invite people into play. I mean, some of the stars that have played there, I mean, you just mentioned Garth Brooks, Dwight Yoakam I've seen on stage
many
there.
Times. Brad Paisley came many times before he was Brad Paisley, famous.
Is that right?
And,
wow.
Yeah, used to come and just sit in with us. He was a big fan. He used to watch us when we played at the Wheeling Jamboree.
Oh, sure.
In West Virginia. So he, when he was growing up young, so
yeah. Wow.
He wanted to come back and visit. And so we'd get him up on stage and we got to watch him become a star.
Wow.
15 times he visited us.
Oh, he's an incredible player too. Fascinating guitar player. So yeah, I don't know. It sounds to me like it's quite a fun place to be, I would imagine, on night in and night out. Like how often do you stick around to hear the music? I mean, I assume you play quite a bit still too.
Oh, we play after Buck passed away, the Buckaroos were playing a couple weekends a month.
I see. Okay.
And we still have all sorts of great concerts, all the national concerts when we could.
Sure.
But I mean, yeah, we had on that stage, we had the Dixie Chicks. We had several times we had Taylor Swift, you know, I mean, Blake Shelton, all of them on their way up. And then later on, very often coming back as a thank you, you know, to come back to Buck's place, you know.
Sure. They just like to play there.
Yeah.
It's got a nice heart to it. Wow. That's great. Well, I can't wait to come out and meet you in person, and I promise I will do
forward to
this
it.
someday. Yeah, and I've got a lot of friends in California, so maybe I'll bring a pack of people and we'll have a party that night. That'd be great. But well, I know that there's probably 1,000 things that we could mention, but hey, I'll get you on again and we can talk about stuff.
Make a list.
Yeah, make a list. I know, and you and I didn't have a lot of pre-time with this to kind of work up anything to talk about, which is fine. This has been really great. This is kind of the way I want the show to be, very loose and just talk about, you know, your life, and I hope things are taking shape, and I hope you guys get back everything going again after the pandemic. Of course, you know, I know it's trying times for anybody in the entertainment industry, especially food service industry. This is like devastating for so many. So I hope you get things back on the right track there and continue what you're doing. So
you betcha.
Well, Jim, thank you so much. This has been our first episode, and I'm so happy that you were a part of it, making
I'm so
history.
honored to be the first person.
You're the first person, and you can kind of watch it grow from here. So this is great. I'll make sure to send you. We've got some incredible people coming on, some fascinating people. The guy that bought the Johnny Cash land and farm, and he owns he owns the Johnny Cash one piece at a time car and all kinds of fun stuff. So we've got all kinds of wacky stuff coming up. So it should be great. So anyway, my friend, thank you so much. You've been awesome to work with, and just a fascinating storyteller. I thank you so much for your time here today.
It's really my pleasure.
All right, my friend.
Okay.
Well, great. Have a nice day. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jim Shaw. Wow, that was incredible, incredible stuff. I'm going to try to leave you with a little bit of this. 1969, Buck Owens performance. Let's see if we can watch a little bit of this.
Thank you. Here's one called Buckaroos.
I'm dishing with musicians. I'm dishing with musicians. A talk show about history. I'm dishing with musicians. I'm dishing with musicians. Let's take a stroll down music history.